The human's name was Elias Mercer, and the last thing he remembered clearly was fire. Fire tearing through the sky, alarms screaming inside his helmet, and the violent spin of his exploration shuttle as it fell toward an unknown moon. He had been sent to chart mineral readings on the edge of mapped space. It was meant to be a quiet mission. No hostiles. No sentient life detected. Just a few weeks alone, gathering data. Then home. The universe laughed at plans like that. The shuttle struck the forest canopy hard. Branches shattered. Metal screamed. Elias blacked out as the emergency systems deployed, sealing the cockpit and forcing the ship into a controlled crash. When he woke, his head pounded, and the air smelled sharp and green, like crushed leaves mixed with smoke. For a long moment he stayed still, breathing slowly, listening. No alarms. That was good. But the ship was silent in a bad way. Dead. Elias pushed himself upright, wincing as pain flared along his ribs. His suit's internal display flickered. Life support was still working, but power was low. He needed to get out, assess damage, and find a way to signal for rescue. He released the cockpit seal and forced the hatch open. Warm air rushed in, heavy with moisture. Sunlight filtered through enormous leaves above him, painting the wreck in green and gold. He climbed down from the shuttle and nearly fell when his leg buckled. He caught himself on the hull, breathing through the pain. Nothing felt broken, but he was badly bruised. The forest was quiet in a way that made his skin crawl. No birds, no insects, just distant wind. Elias ran a scan with his wrist device. The results made his stomach tighten. Atmosphere breathable. Gravity slightly lower than Earth. But the scan also showed something else. Movement. Small, very small. Multiple heat signatures scattered nearby. He frowned. The mission briefing had said no intelligent life.
Could be animals, he muttered. He tried to access the shuttle's long-range beacon.
Nothing. The crash had destroyed the antenna. That meant he needed to repair it or hike to higher ground and deploy a portable signal tower. Either way, he would need tools and supplies. He went back inside the shuttle and began pulling out what he could. Food packs, med kits, a multi-tool, a thin emergency cloth suit meant to be worn under armor in hot environments. As he moved, pain in his side sharpened. He lifted his shirt and saw dark bruising spreading across his ribs. He needed to clean and wrap the area. The interior of the shuttle was cramped and damaged, with twisted metal and hanging wires. It was safer outside. Elias stepped into a small clearing near the wreck, surrounded by tall, crystal-like plants that reflected light in strange ways. He sat on a flat stone, removed his upper armor, and carefully peeled off parts of his suit. The air felt cool on his skin. He focused on his injury, cleaning it slowly, unaware that he was no longer alone. High above the ground, hidden among the crystal plants, several tiny figures watched. They were small, barely reaching the height of the human's boot. Their skin shimmered like polished stone, colored in soft blues and silvers. Large, dark eyes reflected every movement below. Thin wings folded tightly against their backs, trembled with tension. They were women of the Lyrathi people, and they were terrified. The Lyathi had lived in this forest for thousands of cycles. They were careful, quiet, and deeply aware of danger. Their legend spoke of massive sky creatures that fell from the heavens, devouring entire nests and poisoning the land. Now, one had arrived. The creature below them was enormous. Its skin was pale and smooth, without scales or fur. Worse, it had removed its outer shell, exposing vulnerable flesh. To the Lyrathi, this was a clear sign. Only predators did that. Only hunters, confident in their dominance, showed weakness so openly. The smallest of the Lyrathi women, Tiri, clutched her spear with shaking hands. "It is real," she whispered. "The Sky Eater." Another, older and marked with glowing symbols of rank, narrowed her eyes. "It bleeds." They all saw it then. Dark red fluid staining the creature's side. A murmur rippled through them. In Liarathi belief, blood meant hunger rituals. A wounded predator was the most dangerous of all. Below them, Elias wrapped a compression bandage around his ribs and exhaled slowly. The pain eased a little. "Okay," he said quietly to himself. "Still alive." He stood, stretching carefully, and went back to the shuttle to retrieve more supplies. The movement sent a shock through the Liarathi group. "It is preparing," one said. "For feeding," another replied. The elder raised her hand, silencing them. "If it finishes its ritual, it will hunt. We cannot allow that. What do we do?" Tiri asked, her voice small. The elder's eyes hardened. "We call the swarm." Minutes later, Elias returned to the clearing carrying a small case of tools. He set it down and knelt beside it, unaware that the forest itself was waking. Tiny shapes moved through the crystal plants, almost invisible. Threads of light shimmered between leaves. The air grew thick and sweet, carrying a strange scent. Elias frowned. His wrist scanner spiked. "What the—" Something wrapped around his ankle. He yelped and stumbled, dropping the tool case. More glowing threads shot out, wrapping around his arms and torso. They were light, but incredibly strong, pulling him off balance. He hit the ground hard. "Hey! Hey! Stop!" The threads tightened. A sharp sting ran through his muscles, and his limbs went weak. Not paralyzed, but heavy, slow to respond. Elias lay still, heart pounding. Above him, dozens of tiny figures emerged from hiding, wings buzzing softly. They surrounded him in a wide circle, weapons raised. Their voices chimed together in a high, musical language he did not understand. "Oh," Elias breathed. "You've got to be kidding me." They were people. Tiny people. He could crush them without effort. The realization hit him like ice. Slowly, very slowly, he raised one hand, palm open, showing he held nothing. The Liarathi froze. The Sky Eater was not struggling. It was not roaring. It was waiting. The elder stepped forward, her spirit trembling despite her training. "Do not be fooled," she said, though doubt crept into her tone. "This is how it lures." Elias swallowed and spoke softly, knowing they likely could not understand words, but hoping tone would matter. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. "I swear!" His voice rumbled through the clearing like distant thunder. Several Liarathi covered their ears. Tiri stared at his face, at the fear clear in his eyes, and felt her certainty crack. Predators did not look like that. The threads held him fast as more Liarathi arrived, peering at him with a mix of horror and fascination. Some whispered that he should be devoured before he recovered his strength. Others hesitated, troubled by his stillness. Elias lay there, bound and helpless, choosing not to fight because fighting would mean death for them. He did not know it yet, but that single choice would change the fate of two species. Elias stayed completely still as the tiny figures moved closer. The glowing threads held him tightly, pressing him into the soft forest ground. He tested them once, gently, then stopped. Even a small struggle made the Liarathi women tense, their wings buzzing faster, weapons lifting in fear. He forced himself to relax, slowing his breathing, letting his arms rest at his sides.
"I'm not your enemy," he said again, keeping his voice low and calm.
The words meant nothing to them, but the tone did. The deep sound rolled through the clearing, not sharp, not angry, just tired. The elder Liarathi circled him from a safe distance. From her point of view, the giant's chest rose and fell in an even rhythm. His eyes followed their movements, but there was no hunger there, only confusion and pain. Still, tradition mattered. "He must be taken," the elder said. "A sky beast cannot be left free." With a signal, several Liarathi lifted small crystal devices. The threads around Elias tightened and began to pull, dragging him slowly across the ground toward the forest path. Elias grimaced as his injured side scraped against roots and stones. He clenched his jaw but did not cry out. He was afraid that any sign of aggression would make things worse. As he was dragged, he noticed more of the tiny beings around him. Some wore armor made of leaf metal. Others carried tools instead of weapons. Many stared at him with wide, unblinking eyes. They really think I'm a monster, he thought. The path led deeper into the forest, where the crystal plants grew taller and denser. Light fractured into rainbow patterns dancing across Elias's skin. The air hummed softly, as if the plants themselves were alive. After a long, painful journey, the forest opened into a hidden hollow. Elias's breath caught. The Lyrathi city was built into the roots of a massive tree whose trunk was wider than a building. Tiny bridges of woven crystal connected platforms carved into the bark. Soft lights glowed everywhere, like floating stars. It was beautiful. And now, very quiet. Hundreds of Lyrathi gathered, watching the giant being pulled into their home. Fear rippled through the crowd. He is bigger than the legends, someone whispered. He will eat us all, another said. Tiri stood near the front, her small hands clenched. She had followed closely since the capture, unable to look away. The giant's face stayed with her, the way his eyes darted, the way his mouth tightened in pain. If he was a predator, why did he look so afraid? Elias was dragged into the center of the hollow and stopped. The threads pinned him spread-eagle, holding him against the ground. Above him, the massive tree loomed, its roots forming natural arches. The elder stepped onto a raised platform and lifted her staff. The sky beast has been captured, she announced. As the old laws command, it will be judged. Elias closed his eyes briefly. He did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. This was not good. A group of Lyrathi scholars approached, carrying scanning devices and glowing tablets. They moved carefully, as if afraid he might suddenly snap free. One device emitted a soft pulse of light over Elias's body. The readings made several of them gasp. He is not armored, a scholar said. His skin is bare and fragile, another added. Look at the damage. They saw the bruises, the blood seeping through the bandage. They saw how shallow his breathing was. This sky beast is injured, the scholar said slowly. The elder frowned. A trick, perhaps, the scholar replied. But his biology is strange. They continued scanning. Internal structure, heat patterns, muscle density. Their confusion grew. He has no natural weapons, one said. No claws, no fangs. Then how does he hunt? Someone asked. Before an answer could be given, a sudden tremor shook the ground. The crystal lights flickered. A deep, distant roar echoed through the forest. Every Lyrathi froze. The elder's wings flared. The Graxul, she said. It is close. Panic spread through the crowd. The Graxul was a massive native predator, armored, fast, and relentless. Even the swarm struggled against it. Many had died in past encounters. Elias felt the vibration through the ground. His instincts screamed danger. He twisted his head, trying to see what was happening. Another roar, closer this time. The Lyrathi scattered, some flying to higher platforms, others grabbing children and supplies. The scholars backed away from Elias, fear overriding curiosity. The elder hesitated. The sky beast was still bound in the center of the city. If the Graxul came through the hollow, it would kill everything. Tiri looked from the panicking crowd to the giant on the ground. She saw his eyes now, wide, alert, scanning, calculating. Not like a trapped animal, but like a soldier. She made a decision before she could lose her courage. She flew down and landed near his face. Up close, he was terrifying. His skin showed lines and scars. His eyes were deep pools of color she had never seen before. But when he noticed her, his expression softened. He spoke again, gently. "I won't hurt you," Elias said. "I promise." Tiri did not understand the words, but something in her chest tightened. She reached out and touched the glowing thread near his arm. It hummed under her fingers. "You fight?" she asked in her language, pointing toward the forest where the roar came from. Elias followed her gesture. He nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "I can help." The ground shook again. The Grak's hole burst into the edge of the hollow, smashing through crystal plants. It was enormous, easily twice Elias's size, with layered armor plates and a mouth full of grinding teeth. The Lyrathi screamed. The elder turned back, torn between fear and duty. Then she saw something that made her pause. The sky beast was not trying to escape. He was straining against the threads, not to flee, but to rise, to stand between the city and the monster. "Release him!" Tiri shouted, her small voice carrying surprising strength. "He will fight it!" The elder stared at her in disbelief. "You would free a sky beast?" "I think," Tiri said, trembling. "He is not what we think." The Grexhul charged. There was no more time. The elder slammed her staff into the platform. "Release the bindings," she commanded. All of them. The threads dissolved, just as the Grexhul lunged. Elias rolled to the side, barely avoiding crushing jaws. He scrambled to his feet, pain flaring through his ribs, but adrenaline drowned it out. He was unarmed. The Grexhul roared again and struck, claws slamming into the ground where Elias had been a second before. Elias grabbed a fallen metal support from a nearby structure, ripping it free. It bent in his hands, but it would do. He planted himself between the monster and the fleeing Lyrathi. "Stay back!" he shouted, though no one understood. The Grexhul charged again. Elias met it head-on. The impact sent shockwaves through the hollow. Elias was thrown backward, slamming into a tree root. He groaned, forcing himself up as the Grexhul turned for another attack. The Lyrathi watched in stunned silence. The sky beast was fighting a true beast, not hunting, not feeding, protecting. Elias braced himself, heart pounding, blood in his mouth. He would not run, not while they were behind him, and as he stood there, battered but unbroken, the Lyrathi began to understand that legends could be wrong, and that sometimes giants chose to be guardians. Elias barely had time to breathe before the Grexhul attacked again. The massive creature lowered its armored head and charged, tearing up the ground with every step. Its roar shook the tree city, sending crystal lights raining down like sparks. Elias tightened his grip on the bent metal support in his hands. His ribs screamed in pain, but he pushed it aside. Pain did not matter. Not now. He stepped forward instead of back. The Grexhul slammed into him. The force drove Elias into the dirt, knocking the air from his lungs. The metal support scraped across the creature's armor, leaving only a shallow mark. Elias gasped, rolling just as snapping jaws closed where his head had been. The Lyrathi watched from the platforms. Frozen. No one had ever stood in front of a Grexhul and lived longer than a few breaths. "Why does he not flee?" one whispered. Pyra clung to the edge of a bridge, her wings trembling. "Because," she said softly, "we are behind him." Elias forced himself to his knees. His vision swam. Blood trickled from his mouth. The Grexhul turned, tail swinging, eyes fixed on him with cold hunger. "You want me?" Elias muttered. "Come on!" The Grexhul lunged again. This time, Elias dove low, sliding beneath its armored chest. As it passed over him, he slammed the metal support upward into a softer joint near its leg. The creature howled in pain, stumbling. Elias did not waste the moment. He grabbed a loose crystal shard from the ground and drove it into the same wound. Dark fluid sprayed across his arms. The Graxol reeled back enraged. The Lyrathi gasped. They had never seen the monster bleed. But the Greysoul was far from defeated. It reared up and brought its forelimbs down with crushing force. Elias was too slow. One massive claw struck his side, sending him flying into a stone outcrop. He hit hard and did not move. A cry went up among the Lyrathi. "Guardian!" someone shouted without realizing it. Tiri's heart seized. She launched herself into the air without thinking, flying toward him. She landed near his face, shouting his strange sounds, though she knew he could not understand. Elias coughed and rolled onto his side. Pain exploded through his chest, sharper than before. Something was wrong. Very wrong. But he saw the Graxol turning toward the city again. That was enough. With a groan, Elias pushed himself up. His legs shook violently. He could barely stand. The Graxol charged past him, focused on easier prey. "No!" Elias growled. Summoning every bit of strength left in him, Elias ran. He slammed into the Graxol's side, wrapping his arms around one of its legs. The creature roared in shock as Elias drove all his weight forward, using momentum and gravity. The wounded joint gave way. The Graxol crashed to the ground with a thunderous impact. The tree city shook, but held. Elias climbed onto the creature's armored back, his vision narrowing. He raised the crystal shard again and again, striking the same damaged spot with desperate force. The Graxol thrashed wildly, trying to shake him off. A violent twist sent Elias tumbling through the air. He landed hard and did not rise. Silence fell over the hollow. The Graxol staggered to its feet, bleeding heavily now. It looked around, disoriented, then let out a final angry roar, before limping away into the forest, disappearing among the crystal plants. The threat was gone, but so was the giant. Tiri flew to Elias's side, landing on his chest. He was breathing, but barely. His skin was pale, slick with sweat and blood. His eyes were half open, unfocused.
"He saved us," she whispered.
The elder descended slowly, her expression shaken. She knelt beside Elias, something she had never done before, not to anyone.
"He should be dead," she said quietly. The scholars rushed forward, fear forgotten.
They scanned Elias quickly, their devices chiming in alarm. "Multiple fractures," one said. "Internal bleeding, and his energy levels are collapsing," another added. He gave everything. The elder looked at Elias's massive still form, at the blood soaking into their sacred ground. Her voice trembled. "We were wrong," she said. Terribly wrong. The Lyrathi had rituals for honoring fallen defenders, but none had ever been for a being like this. Still, they moved quickly. Tiny hands worked together, bringing healing salves, binding cloths, and energy stabilizers designed for much smaller bodies. They adapted. It was what they did best. They coated his wounds with glowing paste that slowed bleeding. They built a platform strong enough to support his weight, using reinforced roots and crystal beams. Dozens worked together, no longer afraid to touch him. Elias drifted in and out of consciousness. He heard faint, chiming voices, felt gentle pressure, coolness on his skin. In one hazy moment, he saw Tiri sitting near his shoulder, her small hand resting against him.
"You stayed," she said softly. "You stayed for us."
His lips moved slightly. "Worth it," he whispered, though she did not understand the word. Days passed. The Lyrathi kept watch in shifts, guarding Elias as they would a queen. The elder ordered the hollow sealed and scouts sent to ensure the Graxol did not return. Scholars studied Elias's biology carefully, with growing awe. "He is fragile," one said. And yet he fought a monster that kills dozens of us. His strength is not in armor, another replied. It is in choice. On the third day, Elias opened his eyes fully. Light filtered through leaves above him. The pain was still there, but dulled. He tried to move, and felt dozens of tiny hands gently press him back. Easy, he murmured. Tiri laughed softly, a sound like ringing glass.
He wakes, she called. The elder approached, standing where Elias could see her clearly.
She placed her staff on the ground and bowed. The entire hollow went silent. Elias stared in confusion as hundreds of tiny beings bowed with her. I think, he muttered weakly, I missed something. The elder spoke, her voice steady and clear. Giant, she said, though the word carried no fear now. You came to our world as a stranger.
We bound you? We judged you.
And still you stood for us. She touched her chest in a gesture of deep respect. You are no sky beast, she continued. You are a guardian. Elias swallowed, emotion tightening his throat. He did not know what would happen next. He did not know if rescue would ever come. But as he looked at the tiny faces around him, faces filled with gratitude instead of terror, he knew one thing with certainty. He had changed their story, and they had changed his. Elias did not recover quickly. His body was strong, but the damage he had taken was deep. Broken ribs pressed painfully when he breathed. Muscles burned when he tried to move. For many days he lay on the reinforced platform beneath the great tree, drifting between sleep and waking. The Lyrithi stayed close. They brought him water carried in crystal drops and nutrient paste, adjusted carefully by their scholars. They cleaned his wounds twice a day, working together in careful patterns. Tiny lights hovered above his body, stabilizing his heat and slowing infection. Elias watched them when he was awake. They moved with purpose and care, no longer afraid of his size. Some even sat on his arm or shoulder while working, trusting that he would not move suddenly. That trust weighed on him more than his injuries. He had never been trusted like that before. On the 7th day, he managed to sit up on his own, the hollow filled with excited chiming sounds. Lyrithi flew in from every direction, wings flashing as they gathered around him. Tiri hovered in front of his face, her eyes bright. You are stronger today, she said, slowly forming the words she had been practicing. Elias blinked in surprise. You learned my language? He asked. Some, she replied proudly. It is hard. Very big sounds. He laughed softly, then winced as pain flared. Yeah. Fair. The elder arrived soon after, her expression serious. She gestured for space, and the crowd parted. You should not move so soon, she said, her tone firm but no longer cold. I've had worse, Elias replied. Probably shouldn't have, but I've had worse. The elder studied his face carefully. You are a strange people, she said, fragile yet stubborn. That sounds about right, Elias said. She tilted her head slightly. Your sky vessel, she continued. Our scouts found it. It is badly broken. Elias's heart sank. How bad? It cannot fly, she said simply. He exhaled slowly and leaned back. That meant no easy escape, no quick rescue. The elder watched him closely, perhaps expecting anger or despair. Instead, Elias nodded. Okay, he said. Then we worked the problem. That response caused quiet murmurs among the Lyrithi. Over the following days, Elias became part of the Hollow's life. When he was strong enough, they helped him stand. Dozens of Lyrithi supported him with harness lines and energy threads, guiding his weight carefully so he would not fall. Each step was slow, painful, but progress. He learned their names, the elders, the scholars, the builders. the guards. He learned their customs and mistakes he should avoid. They learned his habits, how he needed quiet when pain spiked, how he counted breaths when exhausted. Trust grew naturally. One evening, the ground trembled again. Not as violently as before, but enough to make the crystal lights sway. Scouts returned in haste, wings buzzing with urgency. "The Graxhole has returned," one reported. "Not alone!" Elias felt a chill run through him. "How many?" the elder asked. "2," the scout replied. "Perhaps more, beyond the ridge." Fear rippled through the hollow. 2 Graxul had never come together before. It meant starvation, territory collapse, or something worse. Elias pushed himself to his feet, ignoring the protests of his body.
"No," Tiri said sharply, flying in front of him.
"You cannot fight again." "I don't plan to," Elias said. "Not like last time." "What do you propose, Guardian?" Elias took a slow breath. "You know this land better than I do. You build things small and smart. I just happen to be big." Understanding dawned in the elder's eyes. That night, the hollow transformed. Lyrithi builders worked at incredible speed, weaving crystal fibers into tension nets. They reinforced tree roots and carved channels into the ground. Energy nodes were placed carefully, calibrated to release bursts of light and sound. Elias helped where he could. He dragged heavy stones into place. He bent fallen metal from his shuttle into crude barriers. Every movement hurt, but he did not stop. By dawn, the trap was ready. The Graxul arrived with the sunrise. They burst from the forest, armored bodies crashing through crystal plants. Their roars shook the hollow, echoing with hunger and rage. Elias stood in the open, visible, unarmed. The Lyrithi watched from hidden platforms, hearts pounding. The Graxul saw him and charged immediately. Both monsters focused on the same target. At the last moment, Elias stepped aside. The ground beneath the Graxul collapsed into a prepared channel. Tension nets snapped upward, wrapping around their limbs. Energy nodes flared, releasing blinding light and disorienting sound. The monsters roared in confusion. Elias grabbed one net and pulled with everything he had, dragging it tighter around a struggling limb. Pain tore through his chest, but he held on. The Lyrithi swarmed. They struck joints, released focused energy pulses, coordinated perfectly, each action precise. The Graxul fought violently, but the terrain betrayed them. Their strength meant nothing when trapped and blinded. After a brutal struggle, one Graxul collapsed, sedated and bound. The second broke free briefly, charging toward the tree. Elias intercepted it. He did not attack. He stood his ground and raised his arms, making himself the obvious threat. The Graxul focused on him, as predators always did. At the last second, Elias dove aside, and the monster ran straight into a reinforced root barrier. The impact stunned it long enough for the Lyrithi to finish the trap. Silence fell over the hollow. Both Graxul lay restrained, alive but helpless. The Lyrithi stared in disbelief. They had not just survived. They had won. Cheers erupted, wings flashing, voices ringing like music. Tiri flew straight to Elias and collided with his chest, hugging him as best she could.
"You planned," she said breathlessly. "You trusted us."
Elias smiled tiredly. "Team effort." The elder approached, her eyes shining with something close to awe. "You did not defeat them with strength," she said.
"You defeated them with understanding."
"That's kind of humanity's thing," Elias replied. That night, the Lyrithi held a gathering beneath the great tree. Lights glowed softly. Music filled the hollow. For the first time since Elias's arrival, there was no fear. The elder stood before the crowd. "Today," she said, "we declare a new truth. Giants are not monsters. Monsters are those without mercy."
She turned toward Elias.
"You are not bound to us by debt," she continued. But if you choose to stay, you'll be family. Elias felt something tighten in his chest that had nothing to do with injury. He looked around at the tiny people who had risked everything for him, who had healed him, trusted him, fought beside him. "I'll stay," he said quietly. "At least until I can leave." The cheer that followed shook the tree itself. Above them, the stars turned slowly, unaware that on a small forgotten moon, a human had become something more than a survivor. He had become part of a world that would never forget him. Elias woke to soft light filtering through the crystal leaves, the hollow alive with quiet movement. The Lyrithi were already at work, some repairing damaged bridges, others tending to the energy nodes, and a few carefully examining the captured Graxul. The city felt alive in a way Elias had never experienced. Every tiny movement, every sound carried purpose. He sat up slowly, testing his strength. Pain flared in his ribs, but it was manageable now. Tyree hovered nearby, her small wings beating rapidly. She had stayed through the night, keeping watch. Elias smiled faintly.
"You rested well?"
She asked in broken human words.
"As well as I could," Elias replied, his voice low.
"Thanks to you." Tyree's eyes widened. "We help Guardian," she said proudly. Elias chuckled. "Guardian, huh? That's a new title for me." The elder approached, her expression calm but serious. "You have done more than survive, Elias Mercer. You have shown us what humans are capable of. Strength is not measured in teeth or claws, but in choice." Elias nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had faced creatures far larger than himself and survived not because of sheer force, but because he had remained calm, made careful decisions, and trusted the small people who had once thought him a monster. The Lyrithi scholars gathered around, scanning him gently to ensure his injuries were fully stabilized. They had been working on ways to adapt their healing technology to his size, something that had never been attempted before. Tiny glowing tools floated around, repairing tissue, stopping inflammation, and stabilizing his breathing. As they worked, Elias thought about his shuttle. The crash had destroyed much of the vessel, and even if he repaired it, he had no guarantee it would survive space travel. He would have to rely on the Lyrithi for help, or find another solution entirely. The day passed slowly. Elias learned more about the tiny civilization, their customs, and their beliefs. He discovered that the Lyrithi revered balance and intelligence over brute force. They believed in protecting their world through coordination, clever traps, and mutual trust. It was the kind of society where someone like him, a human, could thrive, provided he respected their ways. By the second day, Elias was walking steadily, with the help of a few energy threads supporting his weight. The Lyrithi had arranged them so he could move without risking further injury. Tyree stayed close, guiding him, occasionally resting on his shoulder. Her presence was reassuring. During a break, Elias looked out toward the edge of the hollow. The forest beyond was vast, full of unknown creatures. The Graxo, the predator he had faced before, was now restrained in a reinforced pen, its massive body carefully monitored by the Lyrithi.
"I can't believe you trapped that thing," he said, shaking his head. "I've fought monsters before, but this
was something else entirely. Tyree hovered closer, her eyes shining.
Guardian.
"Teach us?" she said. Elias smiled faintly. "It's more than teaching. It's watching, learning, and trusting each other." Over the next week, Elias worked with the Lyrithi to repair what remained of his shuttle. They could not rebuild it completely, but with his guidance they reinforced critical systems. The process took time. Every step required careful coordination between his strength and their precision. The Lyrithi could manipulate materials at a microscopic level, while he handled the massive structural parts no one else could move. During one afternoon, a distant tremor shook the hollow. Elias froze. His instincts told him danger was near. The Lyrithi, though smaller and lighter, immediately took defensive positions, ready to protect their city. From the forest's edge, a group of unknown predators approached. They were faster than the Graxel, moving in coordinated packs. Elias's heart raced. This was the first real test since he had recovered. "Stay behind me," he instructed, his voice calm. The Lyrathi hesitated, but the elder nodded, recognizing the necessity. The creatures charged. Elias braced himself, recalling every movement from his fight with the Graxel. He sidestepped the first, grabbed a fallen crystal beam, and swung it across its path. The predator tripped and tumbled harmlessly. The Lyrathi sprang into action, using their energy devices and precise strikes to disable the others. Elias coordinated with them, anticipating movements and guiding them toward effective traps. The fight was brief but intense. In the end, all predators were captured or fled. Tyri landed on Elias's arm, wings trembling from exertion. "You protect," she whispered. "And you all fight smart," Elias replied. "Together, we are unstoppable." The elders gathered afterward, examining the captured predators. They were stunned by Elias's approach. A giant, using brains more than brawn, had prevented disaster. "This human," the elder said quietly to her council, "has shown us the power of combined strengths, not only in force but in judgment, patience, and courage." The days that followed were filled with work and learning. Elias trained with the Lyrathi on how to move safely through their environment, how to use their energy devices in coordination with his size, and how to anticipate threats. Each exercise built trust. The tiny women who had once nearly viewed him as a threat now flew around him freely, touching his shoulders, speaking in soft voices, their small hands brushing against his skin without fear. Elias realized something profound. Trust was a bridge. It allowed beings of vastly different sizes, experiences, and instincts to work as one. He had arrived alone, helpless, nearly devoured in the eyes of the tiny people, and yet now he stood as a protector and ally. One morning, as sunlight danced through the crystal leaves, Tyri approached him with a small device. It was a communication array the Lyrathi had managed to repair enough to signal long range. Elias studied it carefully. Messages could be sent, but travel through space would take days. Rescue was possible, but not immediate. He looked at the Lyrathi around him, their expressions eager and hopeful. Some had begun to consider leaving him, returning to normal life. But he shook his head. "Not yet," he said softly. "I have work here." The elder watched him thoughtfully. "You choose to stay," she said. "Not out of necessity, but because your heart wills it."
"That is rare. Yes," Elias replied.
Sometimes being big is less about size and more about what you decide to protect. Weeks passed. The Lyrathi repaired the shuttle, but Elias had chosen a different path. The tiny civilization needed his guidance. They had learned from him, and he from them. Together they reinforced the city, prepared defenses, and even explored parts of the forest previously too dangerous. The bond between human and tiny alien women grew stronger each day. Legends of the guardian giant spread throughout the Lyrathi settlements. Children whispered his name before sleep. Scholars recorded his deeds in glowing tablets. Even predators seemed to sense the shift in the forest. They avoided the areas under Elias's watch. One evening, as Elias sat on a platform, Tyri perched on his knee. He reflected on the journey. He had arrived alone, wounded and mistrusted. He had faced creatures capable of crushing him, and yet, by showing restraint and courage, he had won trust. The tiny women who had once considered him prey now honored him as a protector. The elder approached, her eyes reflecting the soft crystal light. "Elias Mercer," she said, "your presence here has changed our world. Not because you are large, not because you are strong, but because you chose mercy and courage over fear and aggression." Elias looked around at the hollow, at the city alive with movement and light, at the tiny faces staring at him with admiration and trust. He felt a warmth spread through him. He was part of something greater now, a community that had once feared him, and now saw him as family. "I never expected this," he said quietly. "I only wanted to survive." "Survival is not the same as life," the elder replied. "You have given us both," as the twin suns of the alien moon set behind the crystal trees. Elias stood, supported by the energy threads the Larathi had woven. He looked out across the forest, a giant among tiny allies, yet somehow part of their world. He realized that strength was measured not by size or power, but by courage, mercy, and the willingness to protect those who cannot protect themselves. In the days that followed, he trained more with the Larathi, guided new defenses, and explored the forest with their scouts. Each day brought new challenges, but also new victories. Together, they mapped hidden paths, studied predators, and built new devices that combined human strength with Larathi precision. Elias came to understand that the Larathi had once viewed humans as creatures of destruction, unaware of mercy or reason. But now, he had rewritten that perception, not through domination, not through force, but through patience, intelligence, and selfless courage. Finally, the repaired shuttle stood ready at the edge of the hollow. Elias examined it carefully. It could take him home, but he hesitated. He looked back at the Larathi women, their small faces bright with curiosity and admiration, and knew that leaving would be wrong. His place was here, among them, not above them. The elder approached. "You may leave," she said softly. "Or you may stay. The choice is yours." Elias smiled, a deep and tired smile. "I will stay," he said, "not because I have to. Because I choose to protect this world, and these people." Cheers rang out from the Larathi. Tiny wings beat in unison. Children climbed upon crystal platforms, waving. Scholars recorded every detail, eager to remember the day the human became one of them. Elias Mercer, once a lone explorer lost among the stars, had become more than a survivor. He was a guardian, a protector, a friend. And as the twin moons rose over the alien forest, casting light across the crystal leaves, Elias knew one thing clearly. No matter how small or fragile life might seem, courage and compassion could make even the tiniest beings mighty, and even the largest human could find a home among them. From that day forward, the legend of the guardian giant was told across the Larathi settlements, not as a story of fear, but as a story of hope, trust, and the power of mercy. And Elias, standing among his tiny friends, knew he had found something far more valuable than any mission or exploration could ever give him. He had found a world that needed him, and he would never leave.